Scientists of the Zardi species have assumed that any planet with a large amount of water is unlikely to support life. Although present in moderate abundance, this substance is too rich in oxygen to exist. In such an inhospitable environment, the Zaldians themselves, like all other species on their harsh and cold homeworld, crawled out of the primordial soup of slime pools. Many millennia before they even ascended to the stars, it was believed that nothing could develop in a pool of pure water. Zardi's first major scientific work, and their world's first new global power, was the genetic engineering of a life form that could survive in the salty oceans, an organism that consumed oxygen and produced methane, essential for human survival. Green species are created as single-celled microorganisms that consume sunlight through photosynthesis and can even survive in the vacuum of space. A learned race, a race capable of surviving and even thriving almost anywhere, with the ability to withstand the expansion and exploration of space, the conquest of space seemed only a natural next step. Rockets roaring in the vacuum of space, astronauts cheering from the crowd, crew members entering the launch pad wearing bulky spacesuits. A space station was built, followed by space, elevators, and then expansion. Their star systems and 12 worlds were explored, mapped, and colonized, 11 of which were water. It contains inhabited life. Large amounts of water cannot coexist with any life form. It is turned off. The Zaldi species stretched a helping hand and mastered the stars, who were absolutely sure of the accuracy of their greatest scientific mistakes. They colonized and colonized 11 worlds. Unsurprisingly, the first thing to correct Zara's biggest mistake was a space probe from another star, a small utility vehicle whose design resembled Zara's own first attempt at orbit, but whose origins speak to a far more advanced race than they are. Now, ships were sent to intercept the fusion trajectory, which glowed blue in the darkness. They sent the sequence. The first 14 Zaldi primes are in base 14. They received the same sequence, followed by the first 10 base 10 primes. Something universal can bridge any language gap, and it took 6 weeks to start talking, communicating, exchanging, researching, and exchanging the basics again. The language database was quickly compiled and revised, and it was time for the Zaldi species to test the most cherished maxims of their science. Maxim is based solely on their ignorance that large amounts of water are a curse against life. ATB is 7% 8% land, 20% methane ocean, and flagship transmission 2% consists of water. What is your world composition? The answer that came back destroyed the very concept of life, for the Zaldii knew it all. The Zaldii suffered a blow to science, from which it would never recover 29% of the Earth. Space probes transported 71% of the water. Silence fell on the deck of Zardi's flagship. Compared to the wrist bone, this ship commander is not the same as a rock-like rock rhythm on the wrist. Small crew members sat around their stations. The timing of the translation surprised the commander, and its logical fallacy provided the best explanation. This can change the pattern. We apologized to the xenobiologist on board before remembering that they did not share this concept. We made a mistake and ended up teleporting to wait for it to be fixed, and we realized the human ship teleported back. What is the nature of your error? The biologist looked at its commander. It hadn't received a single command. The translation was wrong, and now it was nervously tapping 8 of its 12 limbs on the console. Unlike his human counterpart, Zaldi crews sat in a pit covered with equipment. This exploited their wide field of view and their many manipulator limbs to their fullest extent, confirming that 71% of the water in the human ship was water. We sent aboard a capsule with the same water/land ratio when the biologist reported this to its commander. It was highly praised. This will fix the error. In such a world, there could be no life. What if it could ask biologists to beat their limbs on the deck? The commander then saw Hing's creation from the spice vacuum somewhat amusingly, and the biologists under his command were somewhat upset at its accidental release. The most important principle of science is that no idea, no matter how strange, can be completely rejected. It's an interesting theory for the scientifically minded, but just a theory. Everything is theory. Biologists counted until a space probe was launched, not by a human starship. This design common in human space is more rational and elegant. It reminded the Zardi astronauts of their own starship, the first of its kind. The aim of the hard ship is to bring the first awkward steps to the new border. The detector it carries. This is just another of the thousands of detectors receiving reports that sensory officials have manipulator hands at their ready. Each Zardi ship has a series of robotic arms, always 8 in number, that can be controlled with one or more maneuvers. Officers had almost removed the need to take space for decades. Such were their abilities. It was even said that one of the combined fleet officers spent more time in spacesuit training than ever before. In real service, this is usually true. 30 lengths covered one of the flagships. 2 robot officers, 20 plus 10 contacts, and 3 white robot hands grasped the space probe. A person takes the capsule out of his claws and releases the cystic band to release the probe. The commander rushed to the ship's head lock. A team of technical and scientific officers was already on standby there. There was an elite unit of scientists coming here from ADB, but they were still many weeks away. At least this ship is the best yet. Zardi brought a laser cutting machine. The commander ordered and waited for my order to open the capsule, and the 2 technicians took a powerful laser cutter from the storage cabinet. Without the proper treatment, its laser can even pass through the hull's hull. It, like all combined fleet equipment, is sterile. High visibility, white sea, with more holes in the capsule for scanning equipment. Instruct the commander and follow orders to bring the sensory officer to me. The scanning equipment was also brought over. Cut the hole and immediately insert the scan unit into it. The crew of the United Team is proud of its professionalism. It concluded that it was incomplete. If the biologists were there to look at the readings, it would be a sight as the sensor officer brought in an order for a new scanning device, and then another and another showed the same readings to the commander. It was confused. It doesn't make sense. 71% war, the commander whispered, stepping back and shaking nervously at the impossibility. In the face of this revelation, its understanding of life itself is shattered, and responsibility for the Zardi species takes over in the moment of contact, flat-centered. It immediately crashed into Fleet Central, the headquarters of the combined fleet of the Zardi species. The Grand Fleet Commander was awakened from a brief slumber, lying motionless on a sealed deck, as Fleet Central was a massive space station and not bound to any planetary body. It absorbed nutrients through photosynthesis before being awakened by a group of high-ranking officials. Grant Commander has received an update on the human situation within minutes. It was dressed, prepared, and briefed on the situation in a few more minutes. It had gone to a meeting with its colleagues at the Navy Hall, friends, colleagues, and valued scientists of the massive space station. Hundreds of Zardi, elite experts in their respected fields, gathered around to hear him speak, irrevocably shaken by our knowledge of the universe. We have received confirmed reports from the combined fleet that humans evolved on a world that was 71% water. The impossible has become possible. Now the unknown is known. We stand, as we have stood since this probe's arrival, beyond the limits of Zui knowledge. The logo for the United Fleet, an astral card of 12 planets around a yellow star, was emblazoned on the wall. Behind him, we are fortunate to have an unprecedented opportunity to end the history of our species and lay the foundations for a new form of modern science. Representatives from the 12 Zardi planets each formed an independent nation and stood in their own enclaves. A combined navy is designed to provide a united front against any external challenge. Is it a supranational organization recruited from these 12 countries to prevent conflicts between them? The law is written in the law. Crafts many times. Essence. How do we know they are telling the truth? Asked one delegate. You should send warships to intercept the spaceship. Large commanders are amused by this proposal. These aliens are interstellar civilizations, far beyond what any species of Zaldi could fight. Even the blisters of their engines could tear our warships into molten metal. I agree with the representative who said one more thing. We can't trust them without more evidence. And then another voice added its approval to the chorus. Then another, up to 10 of the 12 Zaldi worlds committed to military intervention. The combined fleet, for all its power, is still bound to the will of the planet's representatives, with 14 squadrons of battleships being all the Zardi fleet has, and all it takes to this day to intercept a human starship. After many grueling discussions and meetings, the Grand Commander is finally allowed to return to hibernation. The Zardi hibernate for many days and remain awake for many days, while the Grand Commander is awakened too early to complete the full cycle. It lay on the sleeper deck and watched the trail of battleships converge as they swept across the starry sky. The Commander-in-Chief had 14 ships and hundreds of lives under his control. It wants to know if it sends these crew members to die. There are a few days, and the common fleet warfare is getting closer and closer. The human ship proposed an in-person meeting after this meeting, when representatives of the two races would shake hands in a human gesture of friendship. The humans would have to return to Earth. We've been gone too long. The ship explained that there was no way to communicate with Earth. Without returning, we understand that the Zaldi flagship was sent back, its commander still walking the deck, although its civilian escorts had been on other duties since Ed's departure. We ask for information. The commander said to the technology, "We are ready to exchange B resources." We are unable to comply. The human ship carried there only had a crew of 3 compared to the Zardi ship. The United Fleet flagship carried no weapons, but their manipulators could be used to hit objects, and their laser antenna was powerful enough to melt through steel if they wanted to. They could have easily overpowered the 3 humans in their flimsy spacecraft. However, they did not understand that the commander told the humans to prepare our meeting on a large scale. War is a strange thing, as strange as the world of water. In fact, the commanding officer would not be the one to notice these 2 strangers. The meeting began at the request of the humans, 3 humans. The crew of their starship floated out of the airlock and headed for the Zardi ship, 3 Zardi, the commander, and 2 officers in spacesuits greeting them. The Zardi suit, like their ship, is pure white. They have clumsy jets mounted on each robotic arm for propulsion and have separate plastic domes over their many eyes. The humans wore similar clothing, mostly white with blue markings, and each had a pattern on the chest representing the Earth flag known to the commander. The United Fleet crew carried no banner with them. The Zaldi race did not use flags. The 2 sides were no longer facing each other, and Commander Zardi reached out for a handshake. But it was not accepted. Instead, the human commander pointed at himself, Abdul Rafiq. He said, "I came from New Zion on Earth." Leopold Schultz said this as the man to his left patted his chest. "I come from a peaceful base on the moon." The commander knew from his interactions with humans that their species had few colonies outside of their home planet. No world has been transformed like the world of Zardi. She briefly wondered if the terraforming microorganisms invented before the idea of spaceflight could be used to survive the harshest conditions in exchange for the secrets of interstellar travel, and the last remaining human race beckoned. "I come from Beijing to the ground." The commander, Saldi, made a rude imitation of people's gestures. "It said I was from the original colony in Talib, and although I no longer claimed that nationality, all members of the combined fleet had to renounce their previous loyalties. Before joining and taking a new oath of loyalty to the entire Zaldi species, Zen said this second, I was born on the Joint Fleet Spaceship Explorer 3. The spaceborne are considered true Zardi patriots, unrelated to planet or nationality, indoctrinated from birth to believe in the ideal of Zardi unity. The lost Zardi crew is activated, and in their space eye, they come from fleet external control stations. Outer Fleet Outer System and Fleet Inner administer and manage Outer Star System and Inner Star Fleet, respectively, and report to Fleet Center for all major matters. The human commander Abdul held out his hand, and the Zaldi officer Zayli immediately recognized it. It gently grasped Abdul's hand in one of its manipulator arms in the name of friendship between our two species. Abdul said, squeezing his hand firmly, "The oxygen atmosphere in the suit will kill the AAL in seconds. The methane atmosphere in the other person's body will suffocate Abdul, and if he breathed methane into the surrounding vacuum, it would kill them, regardless of species." In the name of 10 billion souls and all of his species, Tar spoke the motto of his beloved United Fleet. "We hope that 2 months before the return of human vessels, we did not use high-call Zardi biologists to explain why their science can be so wrong." The first foreign party they met in each community and political circle, and the whole community in all areas of life that were torn in the waves. But no organization has been hit harder than science. The chairman of the Joint Committee on Extraterrestrial Biology, who only recently resigned in disgrace after hearing the news. Its successor was a bright young scientist from a foreign colony who quickly revised every calculation. The committee had assumed that humanity's knowledge of extraterrestrial biology, as the committee's own knowledge now suggests, was a more accurate model. As previously thought, large amounts of water are not incompatible with the origin of life. On the contrary, in fact, humans actually show that it is actually necessary. Therefore, Zardi stood in the shadow of humans, with a small number. There are fewer people, fewer industries, less science, and almost everyone is short and small. Aspect. Through these abnormalities, these creatures from the world they know prove that death proves how ignorant its species is. In a defiant speech to the Zard peoples, the combined fleet commander called for an 11-1 vote to reject this state of affairs. Only their ancestral homeland, ATB, demanded independence. The people of Zard are united under the flag of Zard unity. The fleet's warships orbited, and, as if mocking their apparent incompetence, the planets acknowledged all the demands made as humanity returned to meet their friends, who brought them unknown gifts of technology and understanding. They discovered a species that evolved overnight. A greeting is the first message sent to a human ambassador. Their aircraft models are similar to the last flight models of the surrounding spacecraft equipment. It will take on the ship, that is, the Joint Earth-Starware Space Vessel venture capital investor. It has been dry for a year before the news of meteor contact bred. Its purpose was to survey a potential colony. Humanity has seen a vast ocean world filled with countless life forms and appreciated the possibility of human habitation. They call it the endless sea. We are people. New adventurers now ship to people who would never swim in such an ocean. The primitive science of this people denies the existence of M infinitum. We come with gifts. The reaction of the Zardi unity was swift, troubling their flagship. It was still the same as it was many months ago, waiting for the predetermined rendezvous greetings. It answered the risk salute. We are Zardi, and we are united. This time, we are ready to embrace the future. Commander Tully was alone, and as it passed through the vacuum between the two ships, the nearly 1,000-foot-long adventurer dwarfed it. His original flagship, the Tully, could pinpoint components on the hull that were recognizable from its own species' design, but all were larger, all new, and all superior. When their first tiny craft entered Zardi space more than 2 months ago, it weighed the opportunity for a boarding operation with humans. It knew intrinsically that such a boarding operation could not happen on an adventurer, not even on a unified battleship, although such a design was always more motivated by legal considerations. Forced rather than actual combat would be more likely against this amazing metal. Hal, a hatch on the side of the Colossus opened, and a suited man swam out to call the Zal's HUD into auto-translated text, so it could read the technical labels on the strange man-made equipment. It knows that the cameras on its suit will record everything for the review of Tullius, the fleet's central commander, in a human suit. My name is Sarah Teal. I have been appointed as an ambassador to humanity. I and a small group of people want to stay in your galaxy. Whenever possible, she spoke using the translator chip, standard in all spacesuits to deal with language barriers. Zaldi Cruz, in the combined fleet from 12 very different worlds, had used similar equipment to talk to his colleagues and crew members. Fortunately, converting it to use a foreign language was a simple task for both parties. Zari hesitated, tapping the floor of the airlock with a mechanical hand. I don't have enough authority to talk about Zard unity. Finally admits that if you want, I can take you from there. We can contact the Central Flight Center within a day, after the total number of naval force centers collected, the capital of Saldi species, of course by Ambassador Tars. It would be wonderful for her life. She dreams of finding friends among the stars. Now her dream has come true. Humanity is blessed. Sure enough, the human astronaut opened his suit pocket and handed Commander Zari's computer hard drive. What does it ask? Tears, ambassador for the Zali database, said that all human research on extraterrestrial life so far, whether in theory or practice, has completely overturned Zali's science in this field. Now the arrival of real aliens arouses greater interest, but they have to start from scratch. Zardi believed that knowledge in the field of xenobiology research was more valuable than any other knowledge, except the secrets of humanity's faster-than-light drive. Commander Zari treated the data disk as if it were made of gold. "Thank you on behalf of my species." "Thank you." It turned and pointed to the flagship, Unity. "I would love to welcome you into my Unity, his flagship, and his pride and joy." In this way, the captain resolved the tradition of their spacecraft. It returned to the first research party at the Methane Sea. The desire to learn more is universal among sentient beings, and the flagship of the Zardi fleet, their greatest asset when venturing into the unknown, is a 100-meter-long, pristine, white on all round, vaguely cylindrical shape set in a massive fusion. The engine and its powerful array of sensors aft and forward had been fully charged, revealing the Voyager spacecraft since the arrival of the other craft, the complex's 4 lasers. 3 of the communicators are actively transmitting. Technicians and officers outside the fleet, the central fleet, and on Earth send an endless stream of messages at the speed of light. Sand gave constantly updated orders and feedback. Thousands of Zaldi, all the best in their field and very many being the best in their species, were actively involved in this historic second contact. A giant centrifuge revolves around the main body of the complex. Like most Zardi spacecraft, the Venturer relies entirely on thrusters to generate gravity and create artificial gravity. Unlike most Zardi ships, its propulsion is more efficient and can be used continuously rather than in short bursts. However, the human fleet was still largely limited to 1 star, having long ago abandoned the consortium's centrifuge system as expensive and unnecessary. Once more, they heard Zardi's beat. "This centrifuge is the crowning achievement of our space fleet and is critical to certain experiments. It only works with adjustable gravity." Commander Zari explained this to the humans. "You brought the refugees to the station," Ambassador Tierce said, directing the hosts to the airlock in the lobby. "It is primarily filled with fuel tanks for the fusion drives needed for long-distance travel, but often also contains important technical equipment. There are no ships. Our fusion drive provides gravity, where a similar method is used," Zari said, gripping the steel of the mechanical arm tightly. Equipped with handrails to help the astronauts maneuver, they were slowly guided by the operations officer of the Joint Command Module controller, who grabbed Zaley and his guests and guided them into the airlock. Till commented on why the manipulator's arm's ambassador seems unnecessary. Traditionally, the commander explained in the early space, if an astronaut loses control outside the vehicle during operation, the cloak manipulator will serve as a lifeline for the drifting astronaut, allowing the manipulator crew to bring them in by hand. The ambassador commander asked, "Why not use a rope?" Tali stopped. "I don't know that I have finally admitted that I'm not an expert. Previously, they only entered the gas gate, and I pushed them gently with 2 huge metal hands. The outer hatch closed behind them. The room began to fill with methane gas. Ambassador to check her suit's external sensor. I know your crutches and inhale." Methane said her master. "This is an oxygen cylinder. The Zaldi unit would hate to see you suffocate." So she was given a large orange bottle with a Zaldi symbol for a poisonous substance on the side. "We sometimes experiment with oxygen." Sarah Tiles waved the bottle away. "Thank you, but no, my suit is 4 hours worth of air." The air locker opened, and Commander Tali floated through it, followed by his guest. "From there, I will take you to the command deck. We can speak to Fleet Central." It handed Till's data drive to a passing officer when it swam off the drive's scythe guard and immediately copied the data. Officer Sardi rode respectfully and walked quickly along the colonnade. There are a few panels on the wall that can be placed using gravity to create steps, but the main method of movement used by most of the crew is a series of levers outside the hall. Ambassador Teal noted that the airlock could be designed for pressure or zero gravity. The commander asked, "What does a human spaceship look like?" Tali is a passing crew member who, judging by his appearance, is one of the engineers. Only a few Zards had the chance to see it firsthand. No one was seen outside of their protective suits. Only the elite know the fleet. Centrally external and internal plus, some faithful others even had detailed records of what a person might look like. There had been theories about creatures made entirely of water, amorphous blobs of fleshy slime, and all the crunchy ideas concocted by armchair scientists and conspiracy theorists. Some people even think that human thought is that hiking stars have the opportunity to support life, which is purely deception. Even for excellent researchers, all kinds of goodwill and respect are the same. No member of our species knows much about humans or human ships. Ambassador Tears has a lot to do. Stop and think about whether the moon turns into a fast, small, sterile spacecraft, because the moon's gravity is lower, so they need less fuel to reach orbit. They don't even need a space elevator. What does this word mean? Commander? The Tali-Zardi Alliance has no space elevators, as they are a direct link between the planet and space. Under previous doctrine, space travel was only permitted for the combined fleet, so the construction of such elevators was prohibited. Space elevators are space stations connected to the planets by durable cables. Sarah Toole happily explained that even if she talked to foreigners, she was very happy, so much less material and staff we carried them. Well, I saw how we call these radio rail relays, saying that Tali was floating in the hall. Until recently, they were banned. When T reaches the hatch at the end of the hall, the planetary authorities are not allowing space equipment for fear of a war between worlds. Read Centrifuge Corridor 3. Lebby and Zardi unification is the most widely used language in all official writings and communications. The combined fleet uses spacecraft and spacecraft capable of moving through the atmosphere to fly crews, harvest materials from asteroids, and grow food on hydroponic farms. This is explained as follows. No planetary authorities can play a role in the joint team. When T clicks the button on the hatch, it can remain objective and detached. It won't open unless the centrifuge is disabled for security reasons, which sounds like what the UN ambassador said. She skidded to a stop. Right in front of the hallway, the commander turned the handle green, opening it clockwise. It was clear that this was a thick bulkhead designed to be sealed to prevent decompression in the event that hull breach protocols required all doors to be closed. Unless someone passes them by, they're based on Earth, but the same principle goes for an impartial peacekeeping body with power over all mankind. They're pretty effective when they want to be the venturer, which was an entirely unplanned project. What was that sound when you were climbing through the centrifuge corridor between Inter and Project? My translation failed. It stands for United Nations. UN is the abbreviation. Please call it that. The United Nations said, Commander Zari, that the sound you just made cannot be pronounced by Zari. If I called Combined Fleet, it would make a series of chirping sounds that sounded vaguely like a hyena. Laughing mixed with a buzzsaw, turning the wood, says incomprehensible. Well, translators could use some subtle too, which is registered by the Commander Zali. We have a linguist on site to help with this, as well as a whole team of exobiologists. Well, that's hardly necessary, Z mocked, mildly offended. Zaldi science is competent enough. ZDI science maintained well into the space age that no planetary surface was more than 30% covered with water. Can it sustain life? No offense intended, but exobiology seems to be a skill in dire need of new experts. Half the United Xenobiological Commission did resign thanks to humanity's arrival, Commander Zali mused. I wonder if Fleet Central would let a human serve on that commission. I really hope they reach the end of the centrifuge corridor and open the hatch in Commander Green. Let his guest climb in. Activate the centrifuge first. It ordered the hatch behind them to be sealed. The centrifuge starts to spin. The corridor they are now in is shaped like a ring. The floor is the inner ring. The ceiling faces outwards. There are thick portals on the ceiling. Pressing the button can be sealed with a bloss door, revealing the space outside. Look carefully, and you can see the fusion trajectory of the Zardi joint spacecraft performing its mission. The Alliance fusion stretched for more than 3 kilometers, and the Greens didn't want to know how long the adventurers were. Ambassador Tyr asked what the gravity of Lib was, and a man stood up and paused. Oh, it did a simple mental calculation. The gravity of the Earth at Lib G is 67 standards. This means that for normal people, gravity can be oppressive, if not unmanageable. Fortunately, human spacesuits have powered exoskeletons that can lift heavy equipment, and the wearers are usually healthy. Commander Zali led the guests to the command deck, where the combined naval officers sat in their work alcoves, and as they entered, they were greeted by two professional professors who paid no undue attention to their men. The best of the Zardi, who were very good at what they did, opened a passage to the Zari in the middle of the fleet and made the middle of the fleet finish. It is a device. Venters has come as planned and has sincere gifts in xenobiology to explore the data. Ambassador Sarah Tierce, representing the human organization United Nations, requested permission to remain at Spice, and as her ship sailed, it looked at Ambassador Tierce, who nodded, the commander. Zayli is the only soldier who understands the gesture's reaction. Barking, a communication officer fleet, thanked the United Nations gift to the central government and granted complete permission to the central government to have a permanent home fleet. Zayli turned to the only person who knew her answer. The Venurer is a planet survey ship. Our original intent was to scan the May infinity planets for colonization potential in the TTI system, and the Latin translation was roughly the same as the English. Humanity has discovered the infinite ocean, says Zayli, chairman of the Joint Committee on Xenobiotics. Possible forms of science. It seems impossible to colonize. Zar reasoned. No Zaldi would set foot on that world, and very few could survive the attempt. Well, we're not Z. Ambassador Tills tapped on her wrist controls. Let me send it to you. Preliminary investigative documents were forwarded by Commander Zayli to his system manager, who is already busy preparing research gifts for the Fleet Center. I am authorized to trade human technology for resources or materials when possible. This near-infinite material can help build colonies and negative energy drives that will power Zardi spacesuits by leaps and bounds. You should consider it, Commander. Zayli considered it. It ordered a message to be sent to Fleet Central, informing them of the entire situation. The response was delayed by only a few seconds, thanks to lightspeed communications, and it took 6 hours to return the response. The communications officer shouted eagerly, ignoring your tone. Zayli noticed this and rushed to read the message. Oh God, Sarah looked. She thought it was its shoulder. What does it say? I suppose your ship will soon be heading for the endless sea. Yes, the commander asked. It has been confirmed that since learning negative energy techniques takes time and effort, Zardi Solidarity will not be able to attend the Horizon course with you. Our smallest model with an ALU air drive takes about 6 months to make. Zayli did some mental math, and the number of lib days was 206, which plus testing and troubleshooting was way too long. It pounded its claws against the ambassador's tire. From what I understand, adventurers want extra spice. Without your team, it wondered somewhat cautiously how the Central Fleet would accommodate a human ship. One breath of oxygen was fatal to them. I have been authorized. If I want you, board the adventurer's ambassador until you're out of breath. Its atmosphere is deadly to Zardi, as is the water, but some rewards require risk. This is an old combined fleet saying that Zal learned from his mentor on his first mission. Mentor died 3 years ago when his spacesuit was hit by a micron meteor. When you took too many options, they would eventually lose. This would be a delay no more than the grass to calculate the numbers, which is again the day of the Earth to put a place. Zelda's crew will provide all the necessary materials and a reasonable reward. Why do you ask the ambassador? She already supports the idea. Why not a biologist or a surveyor? Zari clarified, I am a biologist and a surveyor, and a combined Navy commander must be skilled in all areas of life. If an officer on a small ship becomes incapacitated, the ship may have lost its only expert in the field. Therefore, specialization is rejected. Each crew member must have different skills, and most importantly, I am an explorer. It turns into a PC console, and some short commands can be entered into the control panel. An image of Minfinum appeared on the screen. Humanity first showed us our mistakes by undermining the foundations of biological science. It would be a privilege to restore it. It was decided, and 20 hours later, after a pompous ceremony at Fleet Center and a final system check by the unit commander's crew, the Zayli became the first Zaldi in history to go beyond the orbit of its home star in 7 days. So-and-so's hosts will arrive at Toddy 3, after which they will begin landing operations in endless May. For decades, Zayli has dedicated his life to exploring the unknown to discover the unknown. Now that it was about to experience the denial of its most experienced scientists, a strange thought crept into its mind. Commander Zayli, a species for whom the ocean meant death, wondered how well it could swim.